Hello everyone, this is part 7 of What If Naruto Was Betrayed and Leaves Konoha, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Yoruichi visibly stiffened when Naruto's third tail burst forth and she felt the tremendous power emanating from him, causing even the earth itself to quake in fear. What is this power coming from this boy? It's a form of Kido I've never seen or experienced before, where is he getting it from? Yoruichi thought, before a loud roar erupted over the battlefield. As Naruto roared, his demonic chakra extended from him with devastating results. This outward destructive sphere of chakra was so intense it began to destroy the surrounding landscape and violently pushed back onto Yoruichi. Quickly realizing the seriousness of the situation, Yoruichi began to channel huge amounts of concentrated energy before a massive explosion erupted around her body, incinerating her clothing on her back and shoulders, but leaving herself very much unharmed. Naruto gazed at the woman before him in wonderment, as she raised her hand towards him and spoke in a tone laced with admiration. I'm impressed. I rarely use this technique due to its overwhelming power and difficulty in controlling, but you've made me use it twice. A red claw of chakra lunged at her, but Yoruichi split it straight down the middle with a single swipe of her hand before saying, however, judging by the power you're now generating, I know it's the only attack I have that can defeat you. Yoruichi began to walk, and then sped up, moving far faster than before. Her voice soft and silky in its tone, but you could feel the desire for battle beneath it. Prepare yourself, Naruto-kun, this won't be pretty. Bring it. Naruto growled in confidence. As you wish, Shunko. Flash release. Naruto roared once more, as he unleashed another destructive sphere of demonic chakra, which collided with Yoruichi's attack of pure white energy shooting forth from her hand. As the two attacks met, point blank, the coalescing energies whipped around one another, seeking dominance while creating a pink hue over the battlefield. Both Naruto and Yoruichi were pouring everything they had into their attacks, but to no avail, as each attack counteracted the other one in power and intensity. Gritting his teeth and gathering his demonic chakra to its maximum limit without losing control or his sanity, the blonde Jinchuriki unleashed one final burst of energy, one he was sure would end this battle once and for all. With one final scream, he let everything loose. Raaaaagh. Yet at the exact same moment, Yoruichi let loose the last of her Kido, and sent it screaming towards the impeding wave of red. Everything, even time itself, froze for a moment. Then a massive explosion rocked the battlefield and the subsequent shockwave blew both combatants away from one another. Steam drifted up into the clouds and seconds later, rain began to fall. A few minutes later, as the dust began to settle over the landscape, then cleared away by the steady pitter-patter of water, the two beleaguered opponents staggered their way towards one another. Their clothing was in tatters due to the explosion, and both were bleeding from various cuts on their bodies, as they came to a halt in front of one another. Naruto, no longer in his three-tailed state, shakily took up a taijutsu stance before he heard the Neko woman state in a sultry voice. It's over, Naruto-kun. I'm now yours to command, do with me as you wish. Naruto stared wide-eyed at Yoruichi as she removed the tattered remains of all of her clothing and stood naked before him, her hands sensually gliding over her dark-toned supple body. But I haven't defeated you yet. Naruto stammered in confusion after pulling off his mask. Yoruichi giggled before she stepped forward and stroked Naruto's cheek with her hand, her ample naked breasts mere inches from his own bare chest, as she cooed seductively in his ear. There's no point in continuing, you've won, I've exhausted all of my power, but if you would still like to expend some energy, I can think of more pleasurable ways to do that other than fighting. Naruto didn't understand what the tanned beauty before him had meant until he felt her hand slip inside the waistband of his torn pants and grip his now growing member. Yoruichi's other hand grabbed the back of Naruto's head and pulled the stunned man into a soul-searing kiss, her tongue lashing at his own inside his mouth. Naruto's eyes glazed over before they rolled to the back of his head and he fell backwards, landing on the ground with a thud. The stress of the battle and of Yoruichi's ministrations upon his senses proving to be too much for the young Jinchuriki to handle. Yoruichi snickered at this, as she knelt down and draped her naked form over Naruto's prone body, as the stress of the battle caught up with her as well and she too collapsed unconscious. Meanwhile, Two of Konoha's elite Junin were making their way through a forest in search of their wayward students. Kurenai was deeply concerned about Hinata and wanted to find the young girl before Kiba did. After talking to Shino before they left, Kurenai had no doubt that violence would be the outcome if Kiba managed to reach Hinata first. She and Kakashi had pushed themselves greatly to cover as much ground as they had. The sun would be setting soon, and they needed to establish a camp somewhere. But Kurenai felt they could go a few more miles before they had to stop for the night. Looking over at Kakashi, she truly wondered how her partner on this mission never seemed to trip or lose his footing while keeping his nose buried in that damn orange book of his. Bursting through an opening in the forest, the two Junin came upon a deep chasm with a river running through it. Stopping to catch their breath, they silently pondered how to overcome this obstacle before Kakashi spoke up and said, "I believe there is town 5 to 6 miles downriver. We could go to that has a ferry and cross there. We do you think, Kurenai?" Kurenai did not want to lose any time by detouring to this town and struggled to come up with another solution before her eyes fell upon a rope and wood plank bridge 200 yards from their position. Pointing to her find, Kurenai spoke up and replied, "We don't need to do that, there's a rope bridge over there. We can use it to cross and we won't lose any time." As the two Junin approached the bridge, its crude and unkempt condition became clearer to them. After careful inspection, Kakashi turned to the crimson-eyed Kunoiki and said, "I think we should go to the town and cross there. This bridge has seen better days, and I've no desire to take a cold bath in that river right now. Are we afraid of a little water, Kakashi?" The silver-haired Junin gave her a deadpan look before declaring, "No, I'm afraid of the 600-foot drop to the water." Growling, she shoved him to one side. "Well, do what you want. But we'll lose too much time going to that town, so I'm going to cross here." His hand on her shoulder stopped her. "I don't think you should do that." Fiercely, perhaps with more force than was necessary, she violently slapped his hand away and stalked over to the bridge. "Don't tell me what to, Kakashi. I want to find Hinata and the others as soon as possible. Unlike you, I actually care about this mission." Kurenai snapped this in annoyance and anger before stepping onto the bridge, slowly and carefully making her way across. After Kurenai was about halfway across, she turned to look back at Kakashi, who was still standing at the entrance eyeing her carefully. Calling back to him, Kurenai stated with a little smugness ringing in her voice, "You see, this bridge is fine." It was but a moment later the sound of snapping greeted the ears of the two Konoha Junin, as one of the support ropes between her and Kakashi broke. Suddenly, one side of the bridge fell vertical, which in turn sent Kurenai falling before she was able to grab onto the remaining support rope. Unfortunately, this action caused Kurenai to lose her field pack and all her supplies, as she could do nothing but hang on for dear life while it all dropped into the churning water below her. As Kurenai attempted to pull herself up, she heard that same snapping sound and looked over to see that the remaining support rope was breaking, resigning herself to a choice of either being slammed into the cliff side with the bridge, or letting go of the rope she clung to and taking her chances with the river. Kurenai was just about to let go when Kakashi leapt over and encircled his arm around her waist while grabbing the remaining support rope, just as it broke. As the bridge and its two occupants swung in a downward arc towards the cliff side, Kakashi used his body to buffer Kurenai from the impact and take it all himself. "Oomph!" Kakashi grunted, as he slammed into the cliff side. Upon impact, Kakashi also felt a couple of stinging pops from his ribcage before a wave of pain flooded his mind, as he thought to himself, "Damn, with this pain shooting through me I can't concentrate and focus enough chakra to my feet to climb up the cliff face with Kurenai. I guess I'll have to do this the hard way." Gritting his teeth, the one-eyed shinobi said to Kurenai in a choked voice, Kurenai, climb onto my back and I'll get us out of here." "Hi." Kurenai deftly maneuvered onto Kakashi's back while locking her hands to her arms around his throat without choking the silver-haired nin. Once this was accomplished, Kakashi began the arduous and painful task of climbing up the rope with Kurenai hanging onto him like a backpack. A short time later, a wheezing Kakashi with Kurenai in tow, crawled over the top of the cliff and lay panting on the ground. Each breath of air he took was like a knife to the chest due to his broken ribs. As Kakashi lay there trying to control his pain, he heard Kurenai quietly speak up and say with repentance, Thank you for saving me, Kakashi. I should have listened to you earlier. My rush to find Hinata nearly cost me my life because of my foolishness." Tears welled slightly in her eyes. "If you hadn't been here, I don't know what would have happened." Sorrow etched into her face. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you. Kakashi gazed at the forlorn look on Kurenai's face and could hear the regret in her voice. Kakashi had always considered Kurenai one of the most beautiful women he had known, but he also knew she was also a very prideful woman. Struggling a bit to sit up, he did not like seeing her in such a penitent state. He needed to say something to snap her out of her self-abasement, and thought of the perfect thing, although he knew he would pay for it later on. It's alright, Kurenai, think nothing of it. I just have one question for you, have you put on weight? Immediately all thoughts of remorse and self-reproach flew out of Kurenai's mind upon hearing Kakashi's query. Why you? Just as she was about to tear him apart limb from limb, she watched as his lone visible eye rolled to the back of his head and he flopped to the ground once more. Kurenai, sensing this was not an act or joke on Kakashi's part, quickly rushed over to him. She saw that Kakashi was indeed unconscious, and she then noticed for the first time that his arm was clutching to his side. Tearing open his shirt, Kurenai saw the ugly black and blue discoloring around his ribcage and realized that Kakashi had carried her all the way up that cliff with broken ribs and never said a word to her. Shaking her head in admiration as well as concern for her fellow Junin, Kurenai dragged Kakashi over to a small cropping of trees to shade themselves while she tended to his injuries. As Hinata tucked Nell into bed, Yugito kept a close eye on the Hyuga girl, before glancing over to see Shunsui and Yamamoto wrapped up in their own conversation, keeping the distance from the two women, as they had been less than pleased after hearing about Naruto's second trial and of Yoruichi's description. Daisuke was soundly asleep in a chair and snoring softly, as he had stuck tissue paper in his nose to prevent any loud and obnoxious snoring. This seemed to be the perfect opportunity to speak to the Hyuga girl about something that has been nagging in Yugito's mind the whole day. Calling over to the lavender-eyed girl, the two women quietly slipped into another room and sat down before Hinata asked, "What is it you wish to speak to me about, Yugito-san?" Her rich brown eyes suddenly bored into Hinata's pale lavender ones. "Why'd you do it?" Confused, she asked the obvious question. "Why did I do what, Yugito-san?" At this, thinking she was playing dumb, Yugito's tone of voice became harder-edged. "Why did you save me from that trap in the hallway earlier today?" "I don't understand your question, Yugito-san. Why wouldn't I try and save you?" Bitterness now entered Yugito's tone. "Oh, I don't know, princess. How about the fact that I don't know you and you don't know me? Why would you risk your life for a total freaking stranger? If the situation had been reversed, I wouldn't have saved you." Hinata paused a moment, as she formulated a response before quietly saying, "I understand, Yugito-san, and that's all right. I guess I saved you out of instinct, but I don't regret it. I know you're important to Naruto-kun." And flashing a warm smile. "So that means you're also important to me." "That doesn't make any sense, princess." "Perhaps it doesn't, Yugito-san, but I love Naruto-kun, so anything or anyone he cares about I will care about as well." A tense moment hung in the air, before Hinata spoke up again. "Can I ask you a question, Yugito-san?" "What?" Pausing, the Hyuga heiress took a deep breath before speaking. "Do you love Naruto-kun?" Yugito blushed slightly at Hinata's question before turning her head to the side and growling. "Grr, I don't know how I feel about the blonde Gaki. After what happened to me at the hands of the Akatsuki, I'm not sure what love is anymore. But when I'm around him I feel things that I've never felt before." She tilted her head to one side, and her voice softened. "Maybe that's love." Yugito's face then hardened back into frustration and exclaimed, "Gah, I don't know. All I do know is that he's important to me." She now glares darkly at Hinata. "Which is why I don't want to see him hurt anymore, something I know you've done to him in the past." Hinata dropped her head slightly as the memory of what had happened between her and Naruto 3 years ago flashed across her mind. Shaking her head to drive the memory away and focus upon the reconciliation the two had shared hours earlier, Hinata looked up to Yugito and said with confidence and sincerity, "I will never hurt Naruto ever again, I would rather die first." Yugito stared at the Hyuga girl and tried to find any sense or indication that the girl was lying. However, her Neko instincts confirmed that Hinata was telling the truth. Huffing in annoyance at this, Yugito grumbled and looked away with her arms crossed over her ample chest, an area in which much to her irritation the Hyuga girl rivaled her in. "See that you don't, or else you'll have to answer to me, princess." Enough was enough. Hinata was tired of being called that. "Yugito-san, my name is Hinata." Hinata then gripped the Yugito's shoulder, and forced her to look in her direction. Look, I don't want to fight with you, Yugito-san, that would cause Naruto-kun pain. I know Naruto-kun cares for you or you wouldn't be here with him and I accept that. A pleading tone enters her voice now. Can you do the same with me? I don't want to be your enemy, I would much rather be your friend if you will give me the chance. Yugito pondered Hinata's question for a moment before hesitantly saying. I don't know, Prince. Hinata, I've never had a friend before, how do we begin? Well, since Naruto-kun is the bond we share, why don't we start with how you and Naruto first met, and then I'll tell you how Naruto and I first met and we'll go from there. It was slow going at first, but eventually both women began to open up about themselves and talked throughout the night. When Naruto returned, he would be seeing a much different relationship between the two women than had been there before he left. He would be seeing a friendship. Kakashi awoke with a start and noticed that the sky was dark and dotted with stars. This was interesting, as his last memory had been of the sun shining down upon him. Wincing as he rose from his sleeping bag, Kakashi then took note that he was also shirtless and that he had bandages wrapped tightly around his torso and ribs. It was then he heard Kurenai comment. So, you're finally awake again, that's good to see. He looked around, before he finally spied her. How long was I out and where are we? About 4 hours and we're about a mile from the bridge, it's as far as I could drag you. A wicked glint then entered her eyes, as she stared at Kakashi who suddenly thought. Oh, tell me Kakashi, have you put on weight? Kurenai tersely asked. Kakashi winced again at the tone of Kurenai's question before saying as contritely as he could. I'm sorry for my earlier remark Kurenai, I didn't mean it. I just wanted you to focus on something else other than the bridge fiasco at that time. I wasn't trying to insult or hurt you. Kurenai's face softened upon hearing Kakashi's response, and a small pang of guilt tugged at her heart before saying. No Kakashi, I'm the one who should be apologizing. You got hurt saving me from that bridge fiasco, as you call it. I'm very sorry about that. Why didn't you tell me you had broken some ribs by doing that? It must have been hell for you to breathe while climbing that rope carrying me. He winced at the mention of his ribs, but still managed to speak. It didn't matter at the time, there was nothing we could do about it while we were dangling from that rope. He shrugged, but instantly regretted it, as pain screamed through his body. So I didn't think it was necessary to tell you about it. I suppose you're right, but I still feel badly that you were injured because of my recklessness. You've already apologized for that Kurenai and I accept it. Besides, my ribs don't feel nearly as bad as they did, and they didn't get bandaged up by themselves. So thank you for taking care of me while I was indisposed. Kurenai blushed a little bit and was thankful that it was nighttime so Kakashi couldn't see it, as the memory of his well-toned chest and abs flashed across crimson-eyed woman's mind. Kurenai stammered slightly as she replied. It was nothing Kakashi. I used a bone-mending jutsu Hinata had taught me, and if I did it correctly your ribs should be fully healed in a few days. Well, I'd say you did an excellent job, I'm not feeling near the amount of pain I was earlier. Kakashi absently commented before looking across and seeing Kurenai shivering in the moonlight. Kakashi then realized how cold it had gotten that night and said with concern. Kurenai, why don't you get some rest and warm up in your sleeping bag, you're shivering. I lost my sleeping bag and all of my supplies in the river, remember? Kakashi had forgotten about that and taking a moment to assess their situation, he reached over and opened the flap to his sleeping bag and held it open to silently invite Kurenai to share his sleeping bag with him. Kurenai blushed even more at this action by her silver-haired comrade and said with cynicism. You must be joking. I'm not getting into that thing with you. Kakashi merely sighed at the genjutsu mistress's response before saying. It's either that or you freeze tonight. Besides, you act as though I'm doing this for some perverted reason. Aren't you? She hissed back. A hurt, prideful tone entered Kakashi's voice. Please Kurenai, I would do this for any of my shinobi comrades. Like who? She snapped back. Kakashi paused a moment to think before stating. Well, besides you, Anko-chan, Yugao-chan, Shizune-chan, Tsunade-sama, lots of people. She shot him a withering glare. Exactly, I noticed all of your examples happen to be kunoikis. His lone visible eye curved upwards into his infamous eye smile and he rolled his shoulders in a shrug. They were. I hadn't noticed. A twisted idea hit her. Tell me Kakashi, would you be making this same offer to Guy if he was here? Kakashi's breath hitched in his throat for a moment at the unnerving thought of that prospect before he declared. Guy has his flames of youth to keep him warm, Kurenai, you don't. Kurenai thought about this for a moment before a stiff wind blew through their encampment, causing her to shiver even more. Turning back to Kakashi, she nervously said, "Oh, okay, I'll accept your offer. But if you try anything funny, you won't see the morning you got that." He raised his hands, in a placating gesture of surrender. "Nothing funny, I swear, besides I'm curious about a Konoha urban myth anyway." Hesitantly, Kurenai crawled into the sleeping bag and snuggled up against Kakashi, while he tentatively wrapped his arms around her to warm her up. As she got comfortable, Kurenai thought back to Kakashi's strange comment about a Konoha urban myth and asked, "Kakashi, what did you mean about being curious about a Konoha urban myth?" "Well, Kurenai, there has been a myth floating around in the Leaf Village for a few years that if any man got into bed with the Genjutsu Ice Queen of Konoha, they would be frozen instantly." Her face flushed a bright, beet red, as he went on. "I must say I'm pleased to dispel that myth, as I'm very comfortable at the moment." Kakashi replied while chuckling, which earned him an elbow to his stomach, and Kurenai stating, "I don't freeze the men instantly, Kakashi, but you may very well find yourself frozen by the morning." Kakashi paused a moment, before he wrapped his arms a little tighter around Kurenai and replied, "I'll risk it." Kurenai blushed again at this and gave a small smile before she let herself drift off to sleep. XX Final Senex. Hours later, Naruto's eyes opened sharply and he looked about himself, as rain was plinking in his eyes at a haphazard pace. Zangetsu was now resting in his hand, and with it he felt a tad more relaxed, as he squeezed it reflexively. Yet he also felt a weight on his chest, and upon looking found Yoruichi's honeysuckle yellow eyes staring into his, while her naked body was draped over his. "What the hell?" Naruto exclaimed, as he scrambled out from under Yoruichi and quickly rose to his feet. The bewildered look on Naruto's face brought a wry smile to Yoruichi's face as she felt victory would soon be hers, before she began to bewitchingly crawl on all fours towards the young man who seemed to be mesmerized by her movements. Upon reaching her sexual prey, Yoruichi rose up onto her toes a little to brush her lips against his in a slow lingering movement that caused their lips to latch onto each other. Yoruichi's lips tasted like sweet honey to Naruto, and he heard the Neko woman whimper in pleasure, as she happily accepted his warm tongue, as it began to battle with her own. Their tongues snaked around with one another inside her mouth, both of them fighting for control. Sighing as she gave in and let Naruto take full control, Yoruichi melted into the kiss and to him, molding her body against his perfect one, as she allowed him to dominate her. Yoruichi's hand began to caress Naruto's six-pack stomach, his ribs and finally his nipples, the other hand grabbing his well-toned ass and giving it a squeeze. Naruto moaned loudly at this action, as the Kyuubi shouted in his mind, "Take this woman now, Kit." Naruto's eyes flared red, and before spinning Yoruichi around and pulling her back into his chest, while at the same loosening his torn pants and stepping out of them. Reaching around with both hands to grab and fondle Yoruichi's ample breasts, Naruto's tongue slid along her ear and he growled with desire. "You really want this, you sexy minx?" "Ah!" Yoruichi shrieked, as he tugged her earlobe into his mouth, sucking on it harshly, scraping over it with his teeth. I, was all Yoruichi could stammer in pleasure, when Naruto began dragging his tongue down and around the nape of her neck. Naruto could taste the soft and alluring fragrance of her skin mixed with the small beads of sweat that were forming from her need and of his proximity to her, as he bit down on the nape of her neck. Yoruichi moaned loudly and she ground her hips back against him, before her eyes grew wide, as she felt Naruto's member sliding along the folds of her pussy. In desperation to feel Naruto inside of her, the Neko woman whimpered. Please Naruto-kun. Please, what, my little minx?" Naruto coolly replied, as he felt Yoruichi pushing back against him in frantic need, gasping at the feel of his hardness sliding back and forth between her moistening folds. Please take me now," Yoruichi cried out. Naruto laughed and continued to teasingly stroke her, resting his head against her shoulder so that he could nibble on her neck, while he reached down, line himself up at her entrance and finally give Yoruichi what she desired. However, just as he was about thrust deep inside her, an image of Hinata flashed across his mind as before, and he remembered her words prior to the start of these trials. "Just know that I will always love you no matter what, that I will always be here for you." Then mustering up all the strength he could, Naruto roared in frustration as he pushed Yoruichi away from him. No. Yoruichi was stunned by this as turned around to see Naruto putting his pants back on as he growled out with conviction. No. I will not betray Hinata like this. Although frustrated, Yoruichi couldn't help but be amazed that Naruto had resisted her and taking a deep breath to try and calm herself down said. Congratulations Naruto-kun, now you've truly won and passed the second trial. What? What do you mean? I thought you said I had already won. Behind Yoruichi, the sun began to shine peeking out from behind the grey clouds and illuminating her naked form. And for a moment Naruto had wondered where he had found the strength to turn away such an exquisite beauty, when he heard her answer. Well, that was a bit of a fib on my account. You see, this test was not of combat, but rather your ability to resist desire and temptation, which aggravatingly enough you just did. Just barely. Naruto grumbled in shame to himself. Don't beat yourself up Naruto-kun. The amount of pheromones I've been giving off since we began our little dance yesterday is immense. Quite frankly, I expected you to throw me down and take me the moment I surrendered to you. I don't know who this Hinata is, but she's definitely got a power over you to resist me, Yoruichi stated with a little annoyance and frustration in her voice. Naruto was about to say something when a familiar hum echoes in his ears, as the dimensional rift opened behind Yoruichi. Well, come on, it's time for us to go. Go where? He grumbles, as he rises to his feet, his zanpakuto shimmering in the morning light. She winks and steps 1 foot through. Where do you think? Back to old man Yamamoto's. Naruto's eyes suddenly grow wide with alarm, as he realizes Yoruichi is still naked and he shouted out in a panic. You're still naked, don't you want to put on some clothes first? I'll just get some on the other side. Yoruichi calmly replied, before grabbing Naruto's hand and yanking him into the portal. 1 minute all was silent. Then like a clap of thunder, it screamed into existence. Everyone was suddenly jolted out of their slumber, when a portal began forming inside Yamamoto's domicile screeching and howling into the night. The head captain and commander of the Gotei 13 continued sipping his tea, as if this miniature hurricane were nothing, unable to see, but his sixth sense could tell that there was a drastic change in the air and commented. It seems that young Naruto has passed his second trial. Yamamoto ignored the fierce wind that whipped at his long beard, as he calmly gazed into the abyss and faintly detected 2 chakra signatures. So it would seem. Shunsui lazily replied, as he stretched his arms out and yawned loudly. The wind suddenly tossed Daisuke's chair over, instantly waking him. What's that? He grumbled, picking himself up with a snort, before being knocked over again by Hinata and Yugito who burst into the room. Both women gazed at the wildly fluctuating dimensional rip, unaware of the comrade's pain. The Hyuga heiress and the Nibi container had only recently fallen asleep after spending most of the night talking with one another. Is it Naruto-kun? Murmured the Hyuga heiress, as she peered into the hole with her Byakugan, but saw nothing. If it is him, he sure knows how to make an entrance. Quipped Yugito, her arms crossed before her chest, as the vortex was fluctuating fiercely and casting everyone's hair wildly about. Something began to emerge and everyone waited with bated breath. Hinata nervously wrung her hands together, the suspense was killing her. Naruto-kun, please be alright. Slowly, a figure emerged from its dark depths and when she stepped into the room, everyone's breath seemed to hitch in their throat simultaneously, as Yoruichi was the first to emerge in all of her naked glory. When Hinata and Yugito saw her in this natural state, their killing intent spiked, as the 2 young women instantly formed a bond with one another. That bond being Yoruichi was their common enemy after already hearing about Naruto's second trial and who and what it entailed earlier from Yamamoto. Therefore, upon the entrance of the gorgeous goddess, Yoruichi was promptly greeted by 2 vicious glares and massive combined killer intent, as they both Hinata and Yugito took up battle stances. Who are you? Yugito hissed as her hand strayed to her kunai holster. The Neko woman arched a violet eyebrow and raised her hands pleadingly. Easy girls, I don't bite, well not always. Yoruichi suddenly noticed Shunsui and greeted her old friend. It's been a while hasn't it Shun-kun? The man in the straw hat could only nod as he couldn't tear his eyes away from Yoruichi before he finally stammered. Hi, you're looking well Yoru-chan. Hinata and Yugito's eyes narrowed even further, as their killing intent rose even higher after seeing Shunsui's reaction towards Yoruichi. Sensing this, Yamamoto promptly asked, changing the subject, as the Jinchuriki still had yet to appear. Where is young Naruto Yoruichi? The woman looked behind to the portal, as a voice rang out. I'm right here. Seconds later, Naruto emerged behind the tanned beauty, sliding out of the shimmering black liquid wearing only Zangetsu strapped to his back and the tattered remnants of his pants. Naruto's eyes scanned the room slowly, first to Shunsui then to Yugito. Before falling at last upon Hinata, who had instantly relaxed her stance, forgetting all about Yoruichi the moment she saw Naruto and walked up to him to embrace and place a loving kiss upon his lips. Seconds later. After a minute, she reluctantly broke away and stared at Yoruichi before asking in hard-edged tone of voice, which did not go unnoticed by Naruto. Naru-kun, who is she? Yoruichi Shihoin. Yamamoto stated, to which the Neko rolled her eyes, as he launched into an elaborate explanation, of her being a princess. Former princess, I left that life you old coot. The elderly man let his words die off, as a certain female Jinchuriki shot a heated glare at Yoruichi before she asked. So what's she doing here, and more importantly why is she naked? The Nibi container eyed the dark-tanned woman warily, as if she was a threat. Easy Yugito-chan, Yoruichi is going to accompany us and the reason she is naked is well, we kind of destroyed our clothing during the trial, but she could at least put something on now. Naruto hesitantly stated and silently prayed that he would not have to further elaborate to Hinata and Yugito about his trial and what had almost transpired. Unfortunately, Yoruichi could sense Naruto's discomfort and, still a bit annoyed that he had resisted her, and with a wicked grin stated in a voice oozing with sex appeal, while mimicking Hinata's address of Naruto. I don't remember you complaining about us being naked during the trial, Naru-kun. A tick mark appeared on Yugito's forehead and a look of shock and hurt flashed across Hinata's face, before she bit it back looking away. The Nibi vessel looked ready to kill Yoruichi, but before anything could happen, Naruto caught sight of the brief look of hurt on Hinata's face and reached out for her before a door opened with a small creak and everyone looked in that direction when a small voice called out. Naru-kun. There, standing in the doorway, was a sleepy Neliel Tuodelschwank, blearily rubbing her eyes and holding a stuffed teddy bear in her arms. Immediately, Naruto was across the room, kneeling down before his surrogate daughter. You shouldn't be up, little one, it's very late. Then he was patting her head affectionately, as she realized he was back and hugged him tightly. I'm not, tired. Naruto bent down further, to pick her up. Come on, back to bed for you. Yet it was too late for such a thing, as now Nell had noticed Yoruichi and her young eyes glittered with curiosity. With a speed not possible for one so young, she wriggled away from Naruto, and quickly approached the Neko woman. For a moment, they just stared at each other, then Nell raised her arms, clearly indicating that she wanted to be held, her lower lip jutting out in a pout, as Yoruichi exclaimed and took a step backwards. She's an Arrancar. Nell bore a confused look upon her face at Yoruichi's reaction towards her, before Naruto scooped her up into his arms from behind and shot a glare towards Yoruichi, letting the woman silently know he was less than pleased by her reaction towards the green-haired little girl. Realizing her error, Yoruichi took it in stride, as she strode over and bent down to tickle the little girl, drawing a giggle from the child. Naruto then told Nell to bid everyone good night before he marched back to the bedroom to put the little Arrancar to bed once more. Akamaru suddenly stiffened, then yipped, awakening Kiba and Sakura from their slumber, as that malevolent glint shone in Kiba's eyes again. You caught his scent, boy. The dog barked, as it got up and hastened into a run. Hey. This forced Kiba and Sakura to quickly jump to their feet and chase after Akamaru, as the dog was now outdistancing them quickly. Sakura's mind worked in overdrive, as they ran after the canine. What would she do? What could she say to him that would prevent him from likely attacking her on the spot? Kiba gave a triumphant cry, as he leapt after his dog. Got M. Kiba exclaimed after he heard a crashing sound. However, when the Junin rounded the bend, Kiba's canine familiar partner had fallen into a deep camouflaged pit of which he could not escape, causing the canine to whimper piteously. On the ground lay one of Naruto's shirts, the source of his scent. Kiba growled, and shredded the fabric to pieces with his clawed hands. What the hell is a trap doing way out here? Ino smirked, as she withdrew from Akamaru and back into her body, which had been held by Sasuke lest she fall back out of the tree, as the blonde kunoichi thought to herself. That'll slow you down. The Uchiha released the blonde promptly, and hefted a smoke bomb in one hand. With a sharp twist of his wrist, he lobbed the smoke bomb and it exploded between Sakura and Kiba, billowing purple smoke out around them, their coughs heard from the cloud. And this'll give us a lead. Sasuke and Ino hit the ground running, and passed through the cloud of smoke, each landing a rather brutal blow across Kiba and Sakura, knocking them unconscious, thus buying the two Anbu time to get away, and when the smoke had dissipated, they were out of sight, leaving Kiba and Sakura none the wiser. As they sprang through the trees, Sasuke took note that Ino was silent before a question popped into his mind, and he asked, "Hey, why did you have one of Naruto's shirts with you?" A glare gave him his answer. "Why do you think?" Ino snapped, before her mind drifted away to a remorseful memory. Flashback, 2.5 years ago. "You're not alone, you know." Naruto suddenly erupted into a harsh laughter, causing Ino to cringe slightly, as he replied, "Sakura gave me that line a long time ago." Ino's eyes narrowed at the mention of Sakura's name, and Naruto realized he needed to change the subject and said, "Shouldn't you be tending to your flower shop?" A bouquet of red roses was suddenly shoved into his arms, and he did a double take, as he saw the 3 words attached to the card. You're kidding me," Naruto stammered in a hesitant tone of voice. "And no, Naruto-kun, I'm not. I love you." Naruto's face took on an ashen appearance, as he tried to come to grips with what Ino had just declared. After a few minutes of muted silence, Ino couldn't take it anymore. Pleadingly, she spoke. "Please say something." Naruto looked over to the beautiful blonde Kunoichi and hesitantly stammered, I don't know what to say, Ino. I've had 2 other people say that to me, and both times I got my heart crushed in return. You've been a good friend to me since the wedding." Naruto shook his head to clear himself of the memory. I don't think I could have survived these past 6 months without you. I admit I've grown close to you, Ino, quite fond of you actually." Noticing how close he had gotten, he took a step back before apprehensively saying, "But I don't want to jeopardize our friendship by seeking something more, no matter how much I might want to, Ino." Tears welled in her eyes and her lower lip trembled. "But why? I want us to be more than friends, and it sounds like you would like that too." Because Ino, I'm afraid if I allow myself to love you and something was to happen to us." He stamped a foot, shaking his head rapidly. "I don't think I can take that kind of pain anymore, Ino. Please, Naruto-kun, I know you're scared of loving someone because of what's happened to you in the past, I understand that." Naruto backed up as she stepped forward. "But please give me a chance to show you that I can be the one you can love and that I can love you back, like I already do." As Naruto listened to the soft, caring plea of his friend, his mind was in turmoil about what to say or do. It didn't help when Ino crawled into his lap while he was thinking, while resting her arms on his shoulders. It was then Naruto looked up and truly took in the appearance of the young blonde goddess before him. Ino was wearing smooth black leather tank top which hugged her upper torso tightly, but was also short enough to show her lean and bare midriff. The lower half of Ino's voluptuous body was encased in tight black jeans that seemed to be painted upon her. The clothes revealed all of Ino's sultry curves, giving her a look of sensuous beauty, as they contrasted with her flawless alabaster skin. Naruto couldn't help but blush at the amount of cleavage she was showing by moving so close to him, his back now leaned against the tree, her breath hot on his face. Naruto looked deep into Ino's eyes before softly asking, "Do you mean it, Ino-chan? Do you really love me?" "I meant every word, Naruto-kun, and I promise I'll never hurt you," she whispered before closing the gap and claiming him with her long-awaited lips. A gust of wind blew wildly as their kiss deepened, as his tongue sharply slid through her willingly parted mouth. Their tongues encircled each other, a throaty moan escaping both blondes. Ino's arms wrapped tightly around his neck, as she threw her leg over his lap and straddled him while pressing her chest and body firmly against him. Naruto snaked his arms around her waist and pulled her tightly, encasing her to him. Ino could feel the love surging through them, feelings that had been bottled up by both of them for so long now being released. It was pure bliss, and she couldn't recall a time when she was this happy. End flashback. Or now a time when she was so miserable. Ino remembered when she broke things off with Naruto 6 months later. The look that spread across his face was the same blank expression she had seen when he had opened that hospital door to Sasuke's room. Ino remembered how she began trying to explain to Naruto why she was breaking up with him when Shikamaru came by. Naruto had noticed the nervous glance the Naruto and Ino shared with one another. But before she could say another word, Naruto took Ino's hand, put it into Shikamaru's. A brief flicker of pain flashed through his eyes, but then he was walking away into the night in deathly silence, as if that look of betrayal had never even been there. Ino had done the one thing she promised him she would never do. Would he ever forgive her, for doing what she swore she would never do to him? She could only hope. But, what if he still hates me? Silence reigned throughout the rest of the night. Naruto breathed out a hearty sigh, as Nell's eyes finally drifted shut. She seems like a good girl, Naruto-kun. Yoruichi remarked, having entered the room a few minutes earlier, watching him, as the blonde Jinchuriki looked down lovingly at his dozing surrogate daughter. He nodded an affirmative, as he tenderly ran a hand through the child's hair before commenting. An impulsive one as well, she reminds me of myself, when I was that age. I'm sorry about my reaction towards her earlier, but you have to understand that the prior encounters between a Shinigami and an Arrancar have been difficult, shall we say, in the past. Naruto turned around to question her statement, when he noticed Yoruichi had finally put some clothes on, albeit a racy black bra with a matching G-string was not much of an improvement. I don't trust you, you know that. The tan goddess allowed her lower lip to tremble in a mild pout, as she rounded the bed and stood before him. Naruto stood up before the woman in front of him and was about to say something when again her lips captured his, but this time Naruto pushed her away and enjoyed the look of shock upon her face before sternly saying, "Look, I don't know what's going on in that devious mind of yours, but let me explain something to you. Up until a few days ago, I had sworn off the notion of giving or receiving love from anyone for the last 2 years. But something changed a few days ago." Yoruichi asked. Again he looked down at the little green-haired girl sleeping and said, "Yes, that little girl lying before you and the 2 women you met earlier has got me questioning that notion." Naruto then glared harshly at Yoruichi before stating in a strict tone of voice, "And although I'm still trying to come to terms with my feelings for them, I do know that they're precious to me. I won't do anything that will hurt them in any way. So don't think you can bat an eyelash, while snaking your tongue down my throat, and I'll fall madly in love with you and forget about them. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Yoruichi nodded. "I understand, Naruto-kun. Your love is something I'll have to earn. And if it comes to it." Instead of kissing him, she gave him a big hug. This time he did not shove her, stunned instead. "Then I don't mind sharing you either," Yoruichi stated with a sexy smirk, before releasing him, leaning down to kiss Nell on the forehead. Only then did Yoruichi make her way to leave the bedroom, her hips swaying seductively as she walked. However, before she left, the Neko woman turned around and said, "Get some rest, Naruto-kun. Captain Yamamoto and the rest of us will tell you all about the Shinigami and Arrancar war in the morning." Naruto merely sat down by his sleeping daughter and leaned forward while putting his face in his hands in resignation, and began to wonder how in the span of a few days he had gained a daughter and 3 women all vying for his love and affection. Something he had willingly chosen to give up long ago. Heaving a sigh and resigning himself to the fact that he wasn't going to sort out his feelings about anything or anyone tonight, Naruto lay on his side next to Nell and placed a protective and loving arm across the sleeping girl to keep her close, as he drifted off into what he hoped would be a peaceful slumber. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe, and see you guys later.